Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Bryan. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Gentlemen, this is your episode for all things that concern the physical health of your sexual well-being. And as a bonus, we're also going to be hitting some of the cutting-edge conversations around procedures, supplements regarding anti-aging medicine that will help keep you strong as an ox for many decades to come. This is episode number 2 of our 4-part series on optimizing men's health, which is an exploration around products and services that you may not know about, but need to. And this, like I said, is a conversation specifically around sexual health and anti-aging medicine. And our guide for that conversation is the popular Dr. Amy B. Killen. Now, this is Dr. Amy B's second appearance on this podcast. She joined us at the very beginning of the show, way back in 2019, for a very popular episode that we did called How to Keep Your Dick Healthy. Dr. Amy is a physician of anti-aging and regenerative medicine and an outspoken champion of proactive sexual health. She's worked with some of the highest performing men in the world for proactive treatments regarding sexual health. Dave Asprey, the founder and CEO of Bulletproof and author of New York Times bestseller, The Bulletproof Diet, has worked with Amy for the past number of years. Vishen Lakhiani, who's the New York Times bestseller of The Code of the Extraordinary Mind and CEO of Mindvalley. And then, of course, there's Ben Greenfield, who runs the Ben Greenfield podcast, CEO of KION supplements. He's also an anti-aging enthusiast and considered to be one of the world's top biohackers. So some of the world's best, highest performers have gone to Amy for procedures, for guidance, for supplementation. Amy's also a wife, mother of 3, wonderful person, and she's a close personal friend of both Bryan and I. And she came with me down to Costa Rica last year when I did that Ayahuasca retreat with the military vets who are working with PTSD. So in this episode, Amy shares with you the proactive steps that we should be taking to improve our sexual health, even if we currently feel healthy as a horse. She gives us some practical habits and practices that can keep our erections strong now and many years into the future. We talk about why getting more REM sleep actually helps keep erections strong and healthy for longer periods of time. We remind ourselves why Listerine may actually eventually kill your erection strength. And she brought this up back in 2019 when we did our first episode, and she re-emphasizes that today. We talk about the age when your collagen production starts to decline and what to do about it. Collagen is the substance that keeps your skin healthy and strong. And then Amy gives us the top skincare product recommendations for men. Now, heads up, there's a lot of talk about genitalia in this episode. So if that makes you squeamish, you may tap out early because we dive right into it right off the bat. But I encourage you to hang in because we cover some truly important stuff for keeping your member healthy and strong for many years to come. So enjoy this episode with Dr. Amy B. Killen on optimizing sexual health and anti-aging medicine. Bri, before we bring on our special guest for this episode, you had a little pre-episode rant about how we've strayed from our bread and butter. Do you want to recreate that here for our listeners?
Our roots. This podcast came from a live event called The Discerning Dick. It had the word dick in the title, and we have not talked about dicks, penises, sex, or anything related in months, if not maybe even a year.
Yeah.
And so I'm ready to get back to our roots. I'm ready to get back to Dick Talk.
Yeah, you're a pretty impassioned, outspoken spokesperson for Dick Talk. And I'm glad that we're able to scratch that itch for you today. And
don't say dick and itch in the same sentence.
That's too soon, Bri?
It's sensitive, yeah.
Okay. Well, so I did a little research here, and we're probably up to episode 280, 285, something like that by now. And 260 something episodes ago, we had this guest on our show who has one of the top 20 most downloaded episodes of all time. And it's called How to Keep Your Dick Healthy with our good friend and our resident sex and skin and anti-aging MD, Dr. Amy B. Killen. What's up, Amy?
I feel like I should have made an entrance of some sort. Like I should have been off camera and then come on camera. Man, we should have planned that better.
We should have.
If we could talk to the editor right now, put some music overlay during the intro. That was a great intro, Dominic.
That was
amazing.
so good. Yeah.
Thank you. We need intro music. I'm thinking like WWE style where there's like,
Yes.
fireworks going off. You deserve that, Amy, because
Yep.
that original episode, I'm going to link this in the show notes, was not only like some of the most informative stuff around how to keep our bodies healthy as we get older, to make sure that our sexual libido and our sexual organs are functioning properly. And some of the stuff that you gave me certainly helped me to revitalize certain parts of my libido. But it was just like an awesome, full of laughter conversation, and your personality shines and sparkles, especially when we're talking about such, I don't know, I would say taboo things for most guys. And you really demystified that. So great to have you back.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited. I'm sorry I can't be in person though, because you guys know how much I love hanging out with you in person in New York.
We love it too. This is not going to preclude us from hanging out in person. Let's just do this now. And then whenever you get back here, we will roll out the red carpet for you.
All right.
Dominic, you mentioned that first podcast with Dr. Amy B Killen here. And when I look at our 280 plus episodes, I don't look at the numbers. I don't see how many downloads there are. Sometimes you tell me, sometimes I find out what's top 5 while we're recording. I don't look at the numbers. The way I judge and look at our podcast is how much behavior change came from it for me personally, because I'm selfish. And that podcast, it changed supplements that I took. It changed some dick practices. It changed how I measure things. I mean, it was jam packed. I meant blood stuff, not dick size. Did we talk dick size?
Yes, we did. We had a whole conversation about, do you measure the penis from on top of the erection or underneath the erection? And Amy broke our hearts by saying, you have to go on top of the erection, not underneath, which shaved off at least a half an inch for both of us.
Oh, I have a new piece of information though that you can use. And this is not new information, but it's new to you maybe. So, a good third of your penis is it's under the skin. You don't see it, right? There's a whole part that's under the skin. So I feel like you can add on to your measurement if people ask, and just add a few inches, because it's there. It's there. You don't see it.
I don't know how long you're going to be able to get away with that one.
After hearing about the proper way to measure a dick, I couldn't quite go from full bottom to top because the difference was just too big. And so I decided to split the difference, go from the side, and then I make sure the ruler gets in that skin part that you're talking about, Amy. I make sure it gets jammed in there just a little bit to pick up a few extra.
I have a question. Why are you measuring your dick so often?
Oh, great question. And I hope this becomes a theme during this podcast. I want to make sure that if it's changing, I know. If it's getting bigger because what I'm doing is right, let's say, or maybe I'm getting older, so it's getting smaller. I want to make sure that it's still, this is again, not the doctor here, but this is my scientific procedure.
You have an Excel document with weekly measurements.
I will send it to you after this, yes.
That was such a great non-judgmental question. It's why do guys, probably since I was 13, the first time I ever measured myself, I have not changed. And I still measure myself. It's what's up with that? I think it is the fear of, am I retracting? And then this everlasting hope that maybe it will grow. It will continue to grow at some point. I don't know why we think that way, but I've just realized we've kind of jumped in at the deep end here. We haven't really even warmed up our audience. We've gone right into dick size and measurements. Maybe we can back it up a little bit, ease into the convo. And Amy, I think it'd be really helpful just for our new listeners who came on board and don't know who you are yet. Who are you? Who do you work with? And, what's some of the things that you're excited about in the medicine that you practice?
First of all, I'm very sorry to you new members who got introed that way to all of us. So I'm a medical doctor, and I specialize in what I call sex and skin, as well as longevity medicine. My background is in emergency medicine, so I did that for about 10 years. But for the last 8 or 9 years, I've been working in the kind of integrative medicine and regenerative medicine, which is stem cells and things like that you can use to heal your own body space. With a big interest in hormones, in sexual function and optimization. I also am really interested in skin health and aesthetics, as well as kind of longevity and sort of hacks that we can do to keep ourselves healthier longer. So I have a lot of interests, but sex and skin is one of them.
That's awesome. And you've worked with some pretty high profile people. And are you at liberty to share a few of those that you have worked with that maybe some of our listeners have heard of?
Yeah. So I've treated Dave Asprey, who is, father of biohacking multiple times with stem cells. Ben Greenfield, Vishen Lakhiani from Mindvalley, Mark Hyman. There's a number of people kind of in the wellness and biohacker space who I've done stem cell treatments on, either for skin or sexual function or hair restoration or other things.
I've always wanted to ask this question to somebody kind of in this circle. You all have your expertise, your different areas that you specialize in. Do you just kind of trade what you do? Like you maybe shoot somebody in the dick and then they give you a mantra to go meditate on, and the next person teaches you how to do a triathlon. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, sometimes there is some trading or bartering, like my very first time I ever treated Dave Asprey, which was years ago, like maybe 2016 or so. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. And, I show up with his needle and he's awake the whole time. And I'm about to inject his penis and he has a video camera out, which I'm not even aware. It's a whole thing. But the part of the agreement for me treating him that time was that I could speak at his big biohacking event, which at the time was called the Bulletproof or something. I think it's Upgrade now. But, that was kind of like I'll do this for you, you do that for me. But it depends on the person that we're treating and kind of what they can offer and what we can offer.
Yeah, one of the other places I know that you've spoken at is Peter Diamandis' mastermind events. And Peter Diamandis, the way I look at him, some of the books that he's written, like Bold, he wrote a couple books on flow with Stephen Kotler, I think, and he did SpaceX. So you're talking about like you have access and are speaking to and educating some of the greatest thinkers and mavericks, I would say, on the planet, which is really cool that you're here and sharing your wisdom with us. And so when you have, let's say, maybe some guys who come to you for this kind of work, like what are the common themes that men are bringing to you in terms of areas of their lives that they want to improve upon?
I mean, when they first come to me, it's usually I see different kinds of patients, but the most common kind of sexual dysfunction that I see is erectile dysfunction. And that, of course, gets more common as we get older, as well as it gets more common as we get sicker as a population as well. So ED is probably the number one thing that I treat. But the reasons for that, could be anything from hormonal problems to, mind problems and kind of mental problems to many other things, blood flow problems or whatever. So we kind of figure out like what's causing it and kind of attack that thing.
Is there a percentage of guys that come in with ED and then there's a percentage that it's a biological thing? Like there's something going on with the biology versus it's a psychological thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of view into that?
Younger guys, I would say younger than 30, it's usually more psychological, oftentimes porn related at this point, overuse of porn and kind of that, needing more and more of a dopamine hit and kind of real life, not living up to the porn life is a big cause of ED in younger guys. As we get, 35, 40 plus age range, usually there's some physiological component of it. And of course, any kind of physiological component that causes ED will also cause a mental component, right? Like when you have ED, it's always mental also, but there's oftentimes a physical cause for it.
Yeah. So going back to Brian's point earlier about how he judges the success of an episode based on the real life changes that he's brought into his life, based on what he's learned. I can think about so many of the things that you taught from the first episode, right? Like not using the antiseptic mouthwashes like Listerine. That was a big thing. Let me just hear it in your own words, because I think you'd be able to better describe it than I would to our audience.
No, I was enjoying your what you're going to say about Listerine. So why is it so bad, Dominic?
So Listerine is bad because while it does kill the bad breath bacteria in your mouth, it also kills some of the necessary bacteria that I believe catalyzes nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, which allows for blood flow to hit your extremities, like your fingertips, your toes, and of course, Brian's favorite appendage, the penis.
That's exactly right. Yes. So in order to make nitric oxide from food, which is one of the two pathways to making nitric oxide is this chemical that tells your blood vessels to vasodilate or open up, like you said, and we need that for blood flow to the penis. So in order to make nitric oxide from food, we have to have bacteria in our mouth to do that first step in converting nitrates into nitrites. So if you are killing those bacteria with mouthwash, then you're not going to be able to make nitric oxide from food. Similar to that, if you don't have enough stomach acid because you are using a lot of antacid medications or like proton pump inhibitors, like Protonics, which you can get some of these over the counter now, those are really bad for us because they also prevent nitric oxide formation. And people who use those have increased risk of not just ED, but also things like diabetes and hypertension and other sort of big medical problems.
Nitric oxide, good. what is the compound or chemical that's in mouthwash that causes this problem? Because I went on a journey after our podcast together of finding the right mouthwash. First, I went sans mouthwash. And my girlfriend at the time told me my breath started to stink. So I went and I tried different ones thinking that maybe this is the kind, it's not Listerine, that'll be good for me. Any ideas on what, is there a brand out there, or what is the chemical?
There are some kind of holistic brands, but I don't know the names of them. And there are also some do-it-yourself recipes out there for mouthwash. But I think it's the alcohols. That's at least one of the things in like Listerine that are doing that. But also, people always ask me when I tell them that, they're like, well, can I still brush my teeth? I'm always like, yes, please still brush your teeth. Just don't do a twice a day, killing of your bacteria in your mouth with mouthwash.
Yeah, if you don't brush your teeth, you're not going to need your penis much anyway, because no one's going to want to get near you. I found Aromir, I'll link this in the show notes. Aromir is a mouthwash that I use that's alcohol-free, and it does the trick. Going back to what we were saying before, I stopped the mouthwash. I started using beetroot powder, beetroot extract, because you're talking about the certain foods that you eat have an ability to create nitric oxide. So I put that as a daily supplement. And then nose breathing, and we've talked a lot about nose breath, and also humming while you're nose breathing, right? The humming, I think, can increase nitric oxide production by up to 15 times, something along those lines.
Yeah, it's a lot. Although the studies that say that, they're like, they had someone hum for like an hour and then they saw, a big increase in nitric oxide, which is kind of a long time to hum, I feel like.
Yeah, I do a 15-minute practice every so often, like every couple of weeks, but just the nose breathing, the beetroot powder. And for me, when you came on the show, I was struggling with morning erections. I know I measured my nitric oxide production versus Bryan's. Bryan's was like optimal. Mine was like the worst.
Dominic had one test that said his nitric oxide levels were low. And then he went out and found this is why I love Dominic, the top 10 things to boost nitric oxide. And how's your dick now, Dominic?
Strong like bull.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Stuff works.
So Amy, thank you. And I would just love to know, that was kind of look in the past, but it's been 3 years since we've had that conversation. Like, what's the world look like today and into the future around either practices or supplements or technologies, procedures that men like us and others could start to get excited about around either maybe fixing a problem or optimizing where we're currently at?
Gosh, it has been 3 years. So I don't think there's anything totally new, but there are some things that we can talk about again if we didn't already. I still think that low intensity shockwave therapy, like Gainswave, for instance, is really, really powerful for any guy who has like not perfect erections. Like even if it's not ED, even if it's just kind of like, a little bit of erections not working quite as well, because that shockwave therapy, which is going to be giving sort of high intensity sound waves into the penis, because that's recruiting stem cells to the area, it's promoting local nitric oxide production so that cells in the penis are actually releasing nitric oxide themselves. And you're also kind of encouraging new blood vessel formation. So you do a series of those treatments either in a doctor's office, or now there are actually some home devices that you can use. And those treatments over time, I think, can be really powerful in kind of restoring sexual function in men.
What is something that we should be looking for as guys? I'm 41. And I think that my erections are pretty good. I'm not worried about ED at the moment. What should I be looking for? Is it nighttime erections? Is it morning wood? Is it bad performance? What is the top, maybe a couple things I should be looking for?
One of the top things to look for is morning erections. Like how many days a week are you waking up with an erection? Now, erections at night, they only happen during REM sleep. So if you wake up and it's not during REM sleep, then you're not going to have an erection usually. But given the odds of how often you're in REM sleep, because you're usually doing 3 to 5 cycles throughout the night, at some point during the week, you should be waking up with an erection. And that should be happening, usually a few times a week. And so if your frequency of morning erections is changing, if it's going down or you're not having them anymore, then that's definitely a red flag that something could be going on. And in fact, in men who are not having morning erections, I recommend a few things. Just get a full evaluation, check things out and make sure, testosterone's okay, make sure your blood flow is okay, all of that. And if it's persisting, I also recommend using a penis pump at home, because it turns out that at nighttime when we're sleeping, during those sleep erections, those nocturnal erections, is actually when your body is kind of testing out your penis. It's kind of when your body's like working out your penis, and your penis gets a big rush of blood and oxygen, which is really important for the cells within the penis to stay healthy. And if you think about it, like when you go to the gym, for instance, and you're weightlifting, I've seen Dominic at the gym a lot, right? he's like doing his push-up challenge at the gym, or you're running a treadmill or whatever, your blood flow is being routed to your muscles and your bones and your heart and your brain. It's being routed away from your sexual organs, right? That's kind of how it happens. And so your penis kind of lives in this like, lowish flow state throughout the day. And so the only way it actually gets extra blood flow is either you have sex or you masturbate, or at nighttime when it's filling up with blood several times. So it's actually really important, like the exercise almost of having nighttime erections is actually extremely important for the health of the cells in the penis so they don't die and leave you with ED later on.
Something I like about this conversation, I believe you mentioned this in the last podcast, is the penis is often the canary in the coal mine, like warning that something else is off. Maybe it's biologically, maybe it's behaviorally. But in this case, it sounds like if I'm having sex regularly, let's say once a day, twice a day, or masturbating, whatever it may be, then is it true that I would maybe get less erections at night because I already worked it out?
You might, but what happens is you go into this very, very deep, rest and relaxation, parasympathetic state during REM sleep. So your norepinephrine levels drop really low. And it's like the signal to your body, which before, has been sending blood to all these important things. But now it's like, okay, we can relax enough to actually like test out our sexual organs. And this happens in women too, by the way. It's like nocturnal clitoral tumescence is what it's called. But yeah, I mean, it's possible that you're not having, quite as much at night, but you should still be waking up with morning erections regularly, even if you're having sex.
And back to the penis pump. Why would I want to use a penis pump versus just masturbate?
Well, you can just masturbate, but what happens is, as you get older, the blood doesn't come into the penis as reliably because of the blood vessels, the arteries can get clogged up with plaque or atherosclerosis. And also there can be dysfunction of the cells in the penis that prevent from staying full. And so the pump helps to pull more blood in and to make sure that all the penis and all the cells are getting oxygenated or getting blood flow versus if you're just masturbating, if you're not having full erections, which sometimes happens as you get older, then you may not be supplying the penis with all that good blood.
Okay.
There's some obvious stigma around penis pump usage. I know I certainly, for many years of my life, cracked jokes about that, laughed at it. And then we had the guys from Phoenix. These are the ones who have the at-home Gainswave device that you were talking about. They reached out to us. They sent us some devices. And so the device is a handheld device that actually reproduces that sound wave therapy that breaks up the plaque and has, stem cell regeneration. And presumably, I used it, I wasn't finding any benefits from it. And we ended up not bringing them on the podcast or becoming affiliates with them just because I couldn't personally speak to it. But one of the things that they also sent with it as part of their protocol was a penis pump.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to, to use that, I think twice a day, I don't know, for like 5-10 minutes a day. And it was kind of interesting. I had to kind of overcome my whole resistance to, now I'm a guy who uses a penis pump. And here's the process of lubricating the penis pump. And then what happens if someone calls me and I'm using my penis? It's just all that stuff,
Right.
And I'm binge watching Sons of Anarchy while wearing my penis pump. It's just all these things that I had to work through in my mind. And then once I was past that, just like anything where, that's weird because we haven't done it before, I could see, and I did experience a lot of the benefits that you were talking about, Amy, which is because it was also at a period of time in my life where I'd really dialed back on masturbating. I've talked about this on the show a number of times because of my history in sex addiction. One of the things I've had to work with around my self-pleasure practices, just kind of taking it away for periods of time because I can get really compulsive with it. So, I was eliminating that form of workout like you're talking about. So the penis pump was actually quite helpful for me to work it out during the day. And I guess the last thing I'll say on this, and maybe Amy, you can weigh in on this. I've learned from reading a lot about sleep that deep sleep comes at the early stages of your sleep cycle. REM sleep seems to be backloaded at the end of your sleep. If you're not getting the proper quantity of sleep, if you're not sleeping 7 or 8 hours, you're actually short-circuiting your REM sleep, which is what you're saying is that is one of the key times that your penis is getting the workout. So if you're not getting the proper quantity of sleep, it could eventually lead to or be one of the causes of erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, it's actually, and it's funny, there's several other mechanisms behind that too, because during sleep is when we make our testosterone. At least men tend to make testosterone mostly at night. If you're not getting a lot of sleep, then we know testosterone goes down. Even if in men who are sleeping like 4 hours a night, for instance, versus 8, their testosterone levels go down by about half. And so you have quite a bit lower testosterone, which is obviously needed for desire, for arousal, for basically all kind of parts of that sexual experience. The other thing that happens when you're not sleeping is that you are just more inflamed. Your cortisol levels are a lot higher. You're more in that kind of fight or flight state, and your whole body becomes more inflamed over time. And chronically, that's going to lead to increased risk for atherosclerosis and heart disease and lack of blood flow to, everything. And so sleep is so important for sexual function. There's tons of links between lack of sleep and sexual dysfunction in men and women. I think sleeping is one of the key things that I would say. If I could give everyone like a magic bullet for general health, but as well as sexual health, it would be sleep 7 to 8 hours every day.
Love that. And by the way, since you brought up cortisol and you talked about heightened cortisol and its negative effects, I'm just curious because I've recently been tested and I found out that I actually am low in cortisol. I'm below, range for cortisol production, which is a whole other conversation. I'm just wondering, what effect might that have on my sexual well-being?
That can happen as well. I've seen that more with shift workers who are working, working crazy shifts, and they lose that, because cortisol is released in this sort of diurnal pattern. It's like you have this wave where it's released usually like in the mornings really high, and then it kind of goes down as the day goes on. But yeah, if you don't have cortisol, that can also cause problems as well. I haven't seen as much published as far as sexual problems, but certainly it can cause problems with, like immune systems and immunity and autoimmune diseases and things like that. Sometimes you can have some mismatch in those if you have low cortisol.
Cool.
So, Amy, we've talked about sleep. We've talked about penis pumps. I'm curious, what are the things that you're telling guys to put in their body, supplements, food, or otherwise, to really keep their dick healthy?
Well, Dominic already mentioned, nitrate-rich foods or supplements. So beetroot powder or beets, L-arginine, L-citrulline can be helpful as well sometimes, especially in younger guys for that. Obviously, a healthy diet is going to be important. You have to have enough everything, good fats and protein and all of those things to make the hormones that you need to make to be sexually healthy. There are some peptides that can be helpful for people who have problems, like PT141, which is it's been around for many years, but it's essentially a peptide that works in the brain that increases desire as well as arousal in men. So if you have Viagra, it increases arousal, so it makes you have erections, but it doesn't increase desire. It doesn't actually affect how much you want to have sex. Versus PT141, which actually works in both men and women, is now an FDA-approved drug for women, but not for men. We've used it for both, and that can be really effective for increasing desire and arousal and pleasure and all of those things. And it's a injectable, or you could do an intranasal application, and it's pretty easy. The only problem is it can sometimes cause headaches in some people, which people don't love. So you got to kind of feel it out a little bit.
PT141, I've never heard of this. Can we just, because this sounds really exciting about increasing desire. So you said it's not FDA approved for men yet, but is it something that can still be purchased even if it's not FDA approved?
It's a prescription. So you have to get a prescription from your doctor. So the Velisi is the drug that's FDA approved for women. It's also called bremelanotide. But the peptide itself, which has been around before it became a drug, we've been using that for men and women for years. And especially in men who are kind of resistant to the PD5Is, like the Viagras, those guys, a lot of them will still respond really well to the PT141. And you can also use it in a combination because they're very different.
I'm glad you brought up the difference between just healthy dick getting hard and desire. We've talked to several guys where they've had that situation. They're like, I don't want it. I can get hard here and there, but I don't want it. And gosh, I used to beat myself up if I was walking down the street and saw a beautiful woman and started to get hard. I'm like, God, I'm a hornball. What's the matter with me? Right. More recently, I'm like, thank you. It feels so good to be attracted to something that otherwise would be a missing part of my life. So it's really exciting to hear that there's something out there that can help us feel that.
Yeah. And, and a lot of times, obviously, you should start with general health stuff, checking testosterone, for instance, low testosterone is one of the big things that cause In men, it causes low desire, and women as well. And so you can check those levels and make sure that they're kind of in the middle to upper part of the normal lab range. That can make a huge difference. And also, everything else too, emotional, mental state, like, are you stressed? Are you depressed? Are you anxious? How's your self-image? Like, all of that can play a huge role too in whether or not you're interested in sex. Because if you're stressed out, you're thinking about, you're all wound up in your sort of in sympathetic nervous system overdrive. And so your body can't also think about, having sex with someone if you're in that state.
Last question on dick stuff. If you were to put a 90-day program together for a guy that wants to have a healthier dick, what would be included in that program? And the doctor in you is going to hate this question, but assuming you don't know anything about the person, just generically.
So I'm actually putting together a quest for Mindvalley right now that it's kind of like that. We're basically going to go through, 12 or 14 lessons that are, kind of starting with the mind, like mind the mind, like what are the things that we can do mentally to help kind of prepare ourselves. Then look at the hormones and then boost blood flow. So how can we increase blood flow? And then kind of at the end, supporting the structures with other things, like whether that's injections of, PRP or stem cells, or using shockwave therapy or vaginal lasers, or pelvic floor exercises or things like that. So it kind of starts with the mind and it goes through hormones, blood flow, and then supporting the structures themselves.
This sounds like Amy's hierarchy of needs for the dick.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome.
So Amy, one of the treatments that I've seen gain in popularity, and now, it's being offered at all of the places where you can go and get IV injections, it's a treatment called NAD. And I know that you've talked about it. I know Ben Greenfield has, effusively praised it. What is NAD? What is the treatment purported to do? I know it has anti-aging benefits. What have you seen? And does it have any effect over sexual well-being?
I haven't seen it studied for sexual well-being, although it's possible it has, but I haven't noticed it. But basically NAD is a molecule that's really important in our mitochondria for energy production. And as we get older, we lose our NAD. So it goes down, just like basically everything else goes down as we get older. And we found that you can supplement this with various things. You could do it with oral supplements like something called NMR or NR, which is nicotinamide riboside. Or you can also do IV NAD in people who don't want to do oral all the time. Or like if you're doing a big race or you have kind of, some kind of endurance event and you really want to have a lot of mitochondrial energy, you can do IV NAD as well. This got really popular when David Sinclair started talking about it. He's a Harvard researcher who's really big into longevity, because at least in animals, if they supplement with NAD precursors, they see a length in health span and lifespan. So that's kind of what it is.
And my understanding is like when the treatment takes place, in one of these, say, you sit down and you have an IV inside of you. From what Ben Greenfield has described, it's like you can feel queasy. You may want to throw up. Your body feels like it's on fire, but afterwards you feel like superhuman or Superman, because like you were saying, the energy production. And some people have been using it before, like Spartan races, or right, just as like a part kind of changing of an oil routine every 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And do you have any particular perspective on how often it should be used or when it should be used?
I mean, I take a daily NAD precursor. So I take something called NMN, which is, you can find different brands that make it, but I take that every day. And so I don't really do the IVs as often, but I have done them before. And I think that certainly in people who have like low levels from other causes, like either they're racing or they're, doing endurance events, or they just have some kind of metabolic diseases or disorders or addiction therapy, actually NAD is a big in that, then I think that the IV can be really helpful as well. But I just take it every day.
Do you mind if I just ask what Rapid Rebound is?
Yeah. So Rapid Rebound is an oral peptide supplement that I helped to formulate. And it's basically a combination of 2 peptides and another ingredient. And one of the peptides is BPC-157, which you've probably heard of it before. That one is the most commonly used one for repairing like musculoskeletal, pain issues, tendinitis, ligament issues, muscle issues, bone issues, and helping to prepare like post-workout for muscle fatigue and things like that. But there's also uses for that particular peptide for, improving skin healing, for brain health. There's all kinds of things. So that one's in there. And then there's also something called AOD9604, which is a lot of letters and numbers. But basically that's a human growth hormone fragment that is also really, really good at repairing and healing. So the whole formulation, the whole Rapid Rebound is about essentially repairing your body and healing you so you can get back to performance, whether that's, sports performance or even improving gut health and gut healing and things like that.
Now, Amy, I know that you're a sex, skin, and anti-aging doctor. What are we talking about right now? Are we talking dick health? Are we talking skin health? Are we talking anti-aging? All the above?
This is actually kind of general health.
Okay.
I mean, it's used a lot in athletic performances and people who are, exercising and things like that. But there's actually some science for these ingredients for improving skin health as well. And I haven't seen talk of it for sexual health, but it's certainly possible the way that these things work.
I'm willing to experiment on myself to see if the sexual health piece of it comes true.
Yes, you should. And I've also had a lot of people say that they've been helped with sleep as well, which is probably the third ingredient that's in there. That's really good for inflammation and for pain reduction. Okay,
so we have a rapid rebound. I'm really glad you rebranded that from the ingredients to something that us natives out here can speak to. Is that a pill that you take every day? What does the function look like?
It's a daily pill. And I'll get you guys websites and links and things and discount codes so you can get it to your audience.
Ooh. Nice.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd like that. I'd like to actually incorporate that. So it's a daily, once a day pill that I take in the mornings or?
Once a day, any time of day with food usually, and can take more than one a day, especially if you're really, I was talking to a friend of mine who's this jujitsu guy, and he was all beat up from this recent match. And so I was like, yeah, why don't you do 2 a day for a while? We need to actually, you're in acute stress. But in general, 1 a day is fine.
Cool.
We like to play this game called This or That. I'm going to do it really quick. I'm looking up in my cabinet right now where I keep my daily pills. This or that, choose one, Amy. Rebound or fish oils?
They're very different. Oh, this is a hard game. I mean, fish oil, omega-3 fatty acids probably have more evidence behind them in the recent, just the vast amount of evidence. But I get my omega-3s from actual fish. So for me personally, rapid rebound.
Okay, rapid rebound or ashwagandha?
Very different again. These are tricky because ashwagandha is great for stress and stress relief and adaptogen kind of stuff. I don't take it personally though. I don't think it's all that useful for me.
All right, this or that. Last one, 8 hours of sleep or 2 sessions of masturbation per day?
So good. I got to go with sleep. I really love sleep. I'm pro masturbation, but I got to say sleep is our cornerstone here.
Okay, there we have it. Now we know what to do. Thank you.
After hearing that last comparison, it makes me feel like the other comparisons you made were equally as ridiculous. They had nothing to do with each other, and you're forcing Amy to pick something.
That was tough, Bryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
You certainly were a good sport in playing that game, Amy. The one thing that we haven't touched specifically, and this is something that is in your bio, is the skin part. And I know that actually more and more men are paying attention to, the quality of their skin and their facial appearance and not wanting to have bags under their eyes and, wanting to look vibrant and young. And over the last, 8 or 9 years in the space that you've been in here, right around regenerative medicine, have you seen an opening for more men wanting to look and feel better and taking more measures? And then the second question beyond that is, what are some of the measures that these guys could take if they wanted to right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, in the past, guys would just wake up and they would do their stuff and they didn't put anything on their face and they didn't do anything when things changed. But I definitely see more men now that are interested in at least a basic level of skincare. Basic level to me is you put on some kind of sunblock on your face every day. Whether you put it anywhere else, I don't care as much, but the face for sure, that you're applying some kind of antioxidant serum in the morning and that you're applying a retinoid or similar nighttime product and a good product, not a cheap, bad product. That to me is baseline. I see guys all the time now, everything from doing Botox to fillers or just to doing regenerative stuff, which is a little bit less jarring. So, things like in PRP, pyruvate plasma, which we're just getting some essentially growth factors from your blood and microneedling them on your face or injecting them in your face, all the way up to stem cells and exosomes. Because all of those things don't change the way you look. I mean, for the worse, they don't make you look puffy or have weird lips or have faces that don't move. It just makes your skin healthier. So it's just increasing your own skin production of collagen and elastin and the things that kind of go down as we get older. So I think that these regenerative treatments like the PRP and the stem cells are really, really good for men because there's no worry that you're going to look crazy. or you're going to look,
Right.
too feminine or just weird, or, any of the things that guys worry about. Like, you're going to look normal. You're just going to be a little fresher, a little bit more well-rested looking, a little bit more glowy.
I was fortunate to have dated someone, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago now, where she was a beauty writer and she got all the free product in the world. And there was overflow free product that came to me. And I didn't want any of it because, like, at that time, for me, I thought it was like an indictment on my masculinity. And so I accumulated all these products in my closet, and my friends would come over, they'd bust my balls about it. And then eventually I was like, well, I'm going to start putting some of this stuff on, because she was adamant. She goes, listen, you're 25 years old now. You don't really care because you look like a child, but in 15 years, you're going to thank me. And I started putting on some of the baseline products that you were talking about before, right? The moisturizers, the eye creams. And 15 years later, or so, however long it's been, I can say that stuff makes a difference. When I wake up in the morning and when I put on some of the the nicer moisturizers and the eye creams, it just does give kind of a shine. And so some of the products I use, I guess Kiehl's is a great product that I use. And you're going to spend more for this stuff. Like, these little tubes of eye cream could be $25, $30. They'll last you a couple months, but it's not like Jergens, whatever the brands are that you would buy at CVS, or Aveeno. They're a little bit more expensive than that, but over time they do make a difference.
It does. And I think that when all of us are 25, none of us care about our skin, because we're all like, oh, I'm 25, I'm beautiful, I'll be this way forever. But 25 is actually when your collagen production in your skin starts to slow down. 25 that's when it's the highest. And then every year after that, it goes down. And that's also true of elastin and hyaluronic acid and some of these other things that keep your skin looking fresh. So you got to really start 25 or 30, even if you don't want to. That's a good time to start.
How's 41 to start? Is that also okay?
That's okay too. Yeah, that's okay too.
Okay, perfect. So my barriers to skincare right now is I'll have a conversation like this with someone and I'll say, okay, I'm going to start the baseline skin routine. But then I read another article that says SPF is terrible for your skin and it bleeds into you. And this has got different types of plastics and oils in it. And I get overwhelmed with what I should. And what I end up doing is nothing. I'm like, you know what? Nothing is natural. I'm not going to do anything because I'm not going to put anything bad in me. And I stop.
Yeah.
So I wish there was a tag that's Dr. Amy B Killen approved on all of these things. But do you have a recommendation for maybe just those baseline products you mentioned?
There's a brand that I like right now that I don't have any affiliation with. It's called Skin Better Science. That has a really nice little duo kit that has the morning antioxidant and it has the evening. It's called Alpha Ret before bed. So it has something called Alto in the morning, Alpha Ret before bed, and it comes in together in a little box. I like that a lot because I think it's easy. It's literally one pump in the morning, one pump at night.
That sounds simple. I like that.
You still have to do a sunscreen, but otherwise it's really easy. So I'm a big fan of that brand.
And the sunscreen, because that's the one where I hear the most controversy. I'm killing coral and this isn't actually doing anything for me. So what's the safe type of sunscreen I should be using?
There's two different things. There's sunscreens and there's sunblocks. So sunscreens are the oxybenzene that is killing the coral and other ones like that. And those we try to avoid. Sunblocks are the zinc oxide, titanium dioxide. They're the ones that used to, you put them on your face and you'd have the white lines, the lifeguards and the 80s. Yep. But there are a lot of formulations now which are much better, that don't leave any kind of residue or white lines or white face or anything. And they don't get absorbed. They just sit on the top of your skin. I think the sun is great. I think there's a lot of benefits to sun, and getting some sun exposure every day is really helpful for all kinds of things. But your face and neck, at least, are exposed to the sun all the time when you don't think about it. When you're out walking or driving your car or sitting by a window or all of this. And it's the number one cause of aging skin is photo damage. So I recommend at least putting sunblock, which is going to be a zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, on your face and neck, and maybe back of the hands if you care about those as well. So that's the difference. And I don't think there's really any good evidence that sunblocks are bad for you.
Fantastic. Okay. So we have the AM, we have the PM, we have the zinc oxide or zinc titanium.
Or titanium dioxide. I like SkinCeuticals has a lovely skin block that's a very small bottle that you can travel with, but it lasts forever. I like their sunblock. It's super easy. It goes on nice.
Who makes that?
Great.
SkinCeuticals.
SkinCeuticals. I've heard of them. Yep. Thanks for that distinction, because I'd actually never heard the distinction between sunscreens and sunblock, and also for letting me know that sunblocks have been technologically updated, so that formulaically updated so that you're not having that like white paste all over your face?
Yeah. The white paste was never any fun. Or the body. Like I still have some sunblock that I make my kids use because it makes me look too white and gross. Like when we're at the beach, we'll put it on and like I'll look at myself in pictures later. I'm like, what was wrong with me? Why am I so pale?
It's like a bad vampire show. It's awful.
Yeah.
One more thing here before we'll wrap things up. You and I had an opportunity last year to go on quite an adventure together, Dr. Amy.
We did.
We went down to Costa Rica with a group of Special Forces military vets to do some ayahuasca together. You and I both had, I would say, a tumultuous journey while we were there. I'm just curious, now that we're about 6 months out from the experience, 7 months out from the experience, any reflections on your very first ayahuasca experience?
It's funny. So as you know, the second night of the second ceremony night happened during this enormous rainstorm, like lightning and thunder, like crazy. Like we're outside in this like outdoor open air thing, and like the rain is coming in, and our power got knocked out from the lightning. Like it was so intense. That was going on during our whole ceremony, and that night I didn't have any like major revelations, but I felt like I'd swallowed lightning. Like I felt like I could feel every single nerve in my body, like lighting up, and like not in a comfortable way, like in a very painful way. And it went on for hours. So I was kind of angry about the whole experience. But what's interesting is that since then, I've had several things come up that have been kind of around energy, like including an offer to be an advisor out of the blue for a company that does bioelectric medicine, and including just random like references to lightning and energy and all of these things like coming up over and over again. So much that I got a tattoo on my arm of lightning, because I've been thinking about like lightning and how both beautiful and destructive and kind of powerful, but also like, like unpredictable, but all the things that it is, but it's also like, it's kind of like life. And so anyway, it turns out that I did have some revelations, but I didn't have like any, like at the time, I didn't think that it was very powerful.
Lightning, it so suits you.
Yes.
This all makes sense.
Yeah.
You were so down on the experience when we were there. And like, that's why I wanted to ask, like, 6, 7 months later, that's these things, these medicines are so potent. And when they talk about integration, like you need the time, because sometimes it takes weeks, months, years for the lesson to reveal itself.
Right.
And I think it's pretty cool that it's starting to reveal itself to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. It's been interesting. I was really angry at the time, though. As you know, I was like, this is stupid.
Has there been any studies on ayahuasca and dick health? If not, I'm again volunteering myself. I'm willing to go to Costa Rica and try this. Yes.
I mean, Dominic should volunteer. He's done ayahuasca like 14 times now.
Something I think I've sat in like 20 separate, 20 evenings of ayahuasca ceremonies. And now that I figured out that I had some digestive enzymes that were missing, and now I'm supplementing them. And since I've been taking digestive enzymes, when I do mushrooms, my mushroom trips are galactic. Like I'm actually metabolizing the medicine. So much smaller dosages are taking me to way higher places.
Oh, interesting.
Next time I do my next ayahuasca trip, I will take these digestive enzymes with me, because it's so interesting. You get, a lot of spiritual people, and I'm one of them, will look at like my I didn't really get a lot out of my last few ayahuasca experiences. They'll treat it from a spiritual perspective. They're like, maybe you're blocking something.
Right.
Maybe energetically, maybe you need to do like a 10-day tobacco ceremony and cleanse your energetic body. And I'm like, how about I'm just missing a digestive enzyme that like I will take one pill and then I will blast off and I will have like a revelation. So I'm going to go back and see if it was purely just digest. Actually, you were the one, Amy. This was it. We had dinner in New York City. You asked me questions. You're like, hey, you haven't been able to metabolize mushrooms or ayahuasca, or there was something, MDMA. And you're like, have you tried LSD recently? And I'm like, yeah. And you're like, how was that? I'm like, I went to outer space. And you're like, that is indicative of you having some digestive problem, because I took the LSD. It was like a droplet, right?
Lingual, yeah.
Lingual. And it goes through a totally different part of the digestive system, right? So you were saying like that is the indicator. And so that was actually very shortly after that conversation, I went and got a nutritionist and got me on the digestive enzyme.
Nice job, Amy.
Thank you, Dr. Amy.
Dr. Shaman Amy. There we go.
By the way, I do have some words of advice, which are don't do an ayahuasca trip and then immediately come home and try mushrooms, even though they told you not to. Don't do that because it is insane and not in a good way. It's insane in I'm in my bed, hunkered under the covers, hoping I don't die sort of way.
I think I remember you telling me that story. You had it was like a week back from your ayahuasca trip and you took it.
It was like 2 days. It was like the same week.
You're bad.
Yeah, no, don't do that. You shouldn't.
Rule breaker.
Yeah, I know.
Like one of the people that I love following on Instagram is you. And you have these very informative and also entertaining. It's basically like if you picture the way that Amy is on our podcast, this is like the 30 to 60 second versions of her on Instagram all the time. You're putting out great content, great reels, very informative, bite-sized pieces of information around aging well and sexual health. So I'm definitely going to link your Instagram. Is there any other place that, you want us to point people to?
My Instagram is probably the main place. It's Dr. Amy B. Killen. I do have a website, is dramykillen.com. I have multiple websites. That's one of them. I have several clinics as well, but you can usually kind of reach out to me either on Instagram or through my regular website, and I can direct you to kind of which clinic, might work for you, the stem cell clinic or the integrated medicine clinic. I have some YouTube videos as well, but I really have been focused on Instagram and I've got a little crazy with the reels. So if you don't like the reels, then maybe don't follow me because
then tough shit because they're awesome. Yeah.
Exactly.
So can anybody in the US see you, or do you have to be in a specific location? How does that work if somebody wanted to work with you?
So I am only taking new patients for stem cell procedures right now, myself, but I do have a whole group of people that work underneath me, providers who are, kind of the same mindset that we take patients, but we do have to see you in person first. We can do virtual visits after that, but the first visit has to be in person just because of rules. But then stem cell patients, I have come from all over the world, and we'll do a consult on the phone first, and then they'll come in town for the procedure and just stay for, 3 days or so for that. So there's a couple of different ways, but, just reach out to me and I can let you know.
All right, guys, here's your call to action. In the show notes, I've included a whole host of resources to continue your education on how to optimize your sexual health and how to age gracefully. The first place I would encourage you to start is go to Amy's Instagram page and follow her. She's an awesome resource of knowledge and wisdom, bite-sized pieces of info like we talked about today. I would say every day or every other day she posts on Instagram. So follow her there. And then I also included a link to the Listerine replacement that I used after she recommended getting off of Listerine 4 years ago, which can kill your erection strength because the bacteria in your mouth that's needed to create healthy erections over the course of time. Listerine wipes those out. So I included a link to a mouthwash that I've used for 4 years since then. And there's a number of other resources on how to follow Amy's work, watch her TEDx talk, or I think there's an A-Fest talk that she did that's really informative. So go there, continue your work, age gracefully, and keep strong sexually for the many years to come. Hey, did you get something of value out of this podcast? If so, I'm going to ask you a favor. Would you be so amazing as to go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and a review? Your ratings and reviews can show someone who's just discovered our podcast for the first time that we are worth listening to. And that way we can reach a wider audience. So please head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. You rock.